school.
And Carrie, we'll go around and do introductions so you know who everybody in the room
Great.
is, okay?
Perfect.
So,
I'm Bernice Frazier from Minot.
Hi, Colleen
These
Quinn
are all
from Minot.
That makes it easier.
Holly Day.
Yes.
Mhm.
Tina.
Oh, Tina Love.
Hi, Tina.
Lionel Leo Frohman Jr., Bowling Budget Committee.
Kathy Fifield, Mechanic Falls Town Council.
I think she knows
Everybody
everybody
else.
else.
Everyone else.
Yeah.
So there's one more going around. My apologies. This is the budget.
Oh, yeah, we should.
Yeah, sorry. It was all discombobulated.
And I don't know if everybody knows Sean, but Sean, do you want to introduce yourself to our
I'm Sean
community
Vincent. I'm the
members?
principal at Whittier Middle School. So I'll follow Carrie after she's done.
You got this routine down well.
I just want to say a thank you to all the principals for doing this cover sheet with kind of the basic demographic information, because every year we would spend time kind of going through and scribbling notes, and now it's all here, it's in the same format, so you can kind of look back and forth. So thank you.
Is this mine, Sean?
Sure.
I just meant it's not yours.
It's not mine.
Okay. So Tina, do you want me to start? Or?
Yes,
Okay.
Carrie will be doing her presentation, just, it will be the same format that you've seen all the others, and then Sean will do his.
And then I'll apologize if I repeat anything that got talked about this morning.
So-
I'll try not to, and you feel free to be like, no, all set, and I'll
So,
stop.
Carrie, one of the things that we did was we talked about salaries and benefits and why they range greatly.
I picked up on that.
Yeah, so that's one that you don't need to talk
Okay.
about. And then the technology and the custodial
Oh, yeah.
lines, of course, are
Yep.
being covered by somebody else.
Yep.
So other than those two major things, whatever's new in your budget.
Awesome. All right, so let me just go over a couple of the by the numbers page, all right? So as of yesterday, we had 497 students. We started the year with 510. So we always fluctuate like between 510 and 495 for the last couple years. Pretty steady number. All high school students who are enrolled at the school are enrolled in the minimum of 6 classes out of an 8-period rotation. So some of those classes may be college classes, some of them may be online classes, but to be considered a fully enrolled student, they have to be taking at least 6. The current graduation requirement is 24, so if you do 6 times 4, that's how you get to that number. And there's a variety of courses in there that are required courses, but that's the general set. We run 4 periods a day, 8 periods total, so periods 1 through 4 on one day, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the other day. They're each 78 minutes. The average class size is about 18, but you know what? If you walked into an upper level art course or an AP course, you might see a smaller number than that. If you walk into, a freshman humanities class, you'll see larger than that. So there's a pretty wide variety just because of what we're offering. There's a full-time principal, a full-time assistant principal, and then Sean and I share the co-curricular director, who's Dawn King. The assistant principal is Patrick Flynn. So in terms of who's working in my building, I have 36 full-time classroom teachers. 3, so on top of the 36, 3 are part-time or shared. The 2 music teachers are shared with the middle school. One of them is also shared with the elementary school. And then one of my teachers is shared ELL with Elm Street School, serves students who come to us who have English language learning issues. I have 8 special education teachers. We run the 9 through 12 functional life skills program. I think is it 4 through 8 is down at PCS. I have 3 full-time guidance counselors, 1 full-time special ed social worker, 1 on a teacher contract serves as a teacher, but also wears the hat of a literacy coach, so working individually with teachers to improve their practice, but also the RTI coordinator, which is the interventions we provide to students who are struggling. And this is really focused on making sure that kids are graduating. And then Sean and I share a full-time librarian. who works for both the high school and the middle school. We have 14 special education ed techs. Holly can talk, Holly will give you more details, but I think at least 4 or 5 of them are in functional life skills. That's always a very high need group, and 3 regular ed. 1 is in the library, so works with the librarian, and 2 of them are regular ed in our learning center, which is a tutoring center for students to access during the day and after school and before school for extra help. It's a very busy place. We have currently 22% of our students have IEPs. It says 6 outplacements, but I think we're at 7 right now. It got updated. That's the number I had this morning. Okay. And just so you're aware, of those 7 students who are outplaced, 3 of them transferred into the district this year. They're not students that have come up through our system. They're brand new kids that we've never seen before. So just to give you some context of that. And we have hit 40% free and reduced lunch. We've been just under that 40% for several years, so we're at that now. In terms of just a couple of highlights of programs, AP stands for Advanced Placement. Those are college level classes that our teachers offer through, that they're nationally recognized courses that a student who takes AP anywhere in the country, colleges know what that course is. So we currently have 88 students enrolled in that, and those courses have an end of year exam that if students do really well on, they can get college credit for them when they go to college, University Main System or other schools. So it's about 17% of our student body. First semester we had 49 kids enrolled at LRTC, which might be a record. It's a lot of kids. It's a great program, and we work really hard to get kids over there. We've had a couple kids change programs or decide to stop, so we've got 44 continuing on into semester 2. We're in the process of getting kids enrolled for next year. And we had 31 kids take a college class this year, again, which is something we work really hard at. Kids can take those classes, take those credits with them, saves them money, but it also helps them to be prepared for college when they go next year.
Hey, Carrie,
Yep.
just a quick question on the LRTC. Are there like a certain number of slots for kids from Minot?
Yeah.
Just how does that work? I know kids have to apply and be accepted, but.
Yep.
Not
So
familiar.
we send all our students to Lewiston Regional Technical Center, and we are part of a consortium of 8 high schools: Lewiston, Auburn, Leavitt, Lisbon, us, a couple more.
Turner?
Leavitt.
Oh, yeah.
Oak Hill?
Oak Hill, yeah, thank you. So we compete. Our kids compete for slots because that's what's there. Lewiston has the most slots. And so our kids, LRTC comes and presents all their programs: culinary, machine, shop, CNA, all kinds of stuff. They come and present, and then our kids go over and take a look, and they do applications. And then we fight with the other schools to get kids in. And some programs have more slots than others, but that's not something we have control over. It's just the way that the system, the way technical education is done in the state, or vocational education.
Juniors and seniors?
Yep, just juniors and seniors are eligible. So our current sophomores are working on that now. And then we work really hard on the school side to make sure their schedule works so they can go. And the only kids who really struggle are the ones who have a really bad freshman and sophomore year and are behind. But we try to keep them caught up so that that option is available to them. Okay? So they ride a bus over. So they come to school in the morning, they ride a bus. They come back usually by last block of the day, every other day. Okay? So any questions about high school in general? Okay, so we'll get to the budget. So I recognize that the setup here can be a little bit confusing. So, and I saw, Kim, you guys, we got a little bit lost. So I'm going to try to make sure that I help you to stick with me. So the first set of budget numbers are around the guidance department. So that's 2120. And it's about the first 10 lines.
And I've been projecting up on the screen, Carrie, so if they get lost, they can kind of see where my cursor is or
Yeah.
what.
So stop me at any point if you don't know where I am, okay? So like I said, we have 3 full-time guidance counselors. I think there's a secretary in there, so in terms of that cost. The stipend there, that's $4,000. We pay one of those guidance counselors to be the guidance director. So she will work through the summer. She will do a lot of the organizational things that have to happen with the other LRTC sending schools. She's got a lot more duties with the same caseload of students. So she has the same number of students that she's responsible for in addition to all that stuff. And that's Hillary Bush. So the only lines that really have much budget in here are the employee training and development. So That line has 1,760. That's gone up because that money used to be in the regular education employee training line, and it was in the wrong place. So it's not really an increase. I've just moved it from the regular education to this line. And that amount pays for a regular counseling group that they participate in. It's called a supervision group, and they contract with the social workers, the middle school guidance counselor, elementary guidance counselor. They contract with a USM professor to work with them on a monthly basis to provide professional development. Most of the professional development they can do and access is free. So this is the only one we really pay for. General supplies, that's jumped up by a significant amount because we need a fireproof file cabinet. We have finally reached the point at which we cannot keep all of the high school records in the high school anymore. We have 15 years worth of graduates. So Tina and I talked about starting to move some to storage at Elm Street School, so we need a fireproof cabinet to do that. We've decided that we can keep about 10 years worth of transcripts and things like that for students who come back and are applying to colleges. But after that, we can always access them, but they won't be on site. And then dues and fees, again, that amount, it's what we pay to send the kids to a college fair, and it's moved. It's not a new fee. I moved it from regular instruction because it belongs with guidance. So I'm just cleaning things up, okay? Any questions around the guidance? Okay. The next three lines have to do with stipends to department head and teacher leaders. That number has, over time, for those of you who've been around, gone down. It used to be around $40,000, and it's been cleaned up a lot. This covers department heads, so math department head, science department head. It covers stipends to certification mentors. It covers, we have Roundtable, which is an advisory program, and there's one coordinator for each grade. So it covers that, and it covers the leadership team that meets once a week. Mariella participates in those meetings. So we meet once a week and make a lot of decisions around how the school functions. So that's pretty much what that is. There's a handful of other things in there, but. Okay, so the next chunk, 2220, is all the library. So all the 2220 lines. And I will say, pretty much 2/3 of the library is going to show up in mine, and then about 1/3 of it's going to show up in Sean's, because we try to make sure that it's sort of distributed appropriately, and it looks sort of that the costs are associated appropriately. So the librarian salary is one of those things. Okay, so like I said, there's one librarian and there's one ed tech. So in terms of all the employees, so I'm going to slide down to employee training development. That pretty much covers 2 conferences that Julie goes to that are for the state librarians. Pretty minimal cost for but it's sort of National Book Award things and things like that. The software repairs, that is part of the fee for the Destiny, which is the library management. Did the elementary people talk about that? It's the library management system that they have for keeping track of the books and things like that. Let's see, the next line. Other purchase services is for some subscriptions to various newspapers, some periodicals, things like that. The next one is general supplies. There's only $300 in there. I think it's mostly for batteries, spine, date materials, things for fixing books and things like that. The instructional supplies, these are just things that she uses to make bulletin boards, posters, things like that. So the book budget is $9,600. It's a little bit higher than the $15 a student. The high school budget was for years, high school, middle school budget for years underfunded. So Julie is still in the process of updating. We have some reference materials that date back to when the building opened, and so she's still in the process of culling those and replacing them. And a lot of them are pretty outdated and expensive books. But she's also doing a tremendous job of replacing and updating the choice books that students have to read both at middle school and high school. She's got a very vibrant library going, which is fantastic because it was not a happy place for a while. Julie Purdy is awesome. Technology-related supplies, headphones, keyboards, things like that, nothing significant. And same for the, oh, that one's not in there. Yeah, and then dues and fees. So dues and fees have to do with online databases and subscriptions to those. There it is, in the Gale Virtual Reference Library. These are all access to electronic books, databases that have research across a whole wide variety of periodicals that kids can access online. So for the amount of money that we spend, it gets us way more than if we could try to subscribe to all of that. Databases are a huge piece of what kids need to be prepared to use when they go to college, without question. And Julie's done a good job of making sure that kids are getting trained in that.
The technology-related supplies, is that
Yep.
equipment or something that you had bought last year?
Yep, sorry, yep, no, there's a note. So we had originally put in a large amount to buy keyboards to attach to iPads. And then that money actually was purchased out of Title, didn't we end up buying it out of Title VI anyway?
Well, that money was before we knew we were getting all those free ones.
Right, right, so we just don't need it. So through the testing and all this other stuff, we just don't need to buy them. We've got a whole nother system for that. So just didn't need to budget for it this year. And I don't know if we will at all. It may come back, but, so it's keyboards for kids to sign out if they want to use it with their iPads. All right, any questions around the library?
And Carrie, do I remember in your dues and fees that you had something that you'd been paying for that you now don't need to pay for in the future, and that's why you have a 19% decrease? There was like, not Follett, but there was a,
I think it's the Gale virtual
Yes.
thing. We made final payment was this year,
Right.
so it reduced a little bit because we've purchased it and it's done. So now it's just maintenance. Yes, thank you. Okay, the next set of lines we're going to skip is the 2230. Those are the technology lines for the high school. So I'm going to just skip right past them and let Linda do all that, because I will surely screw it up. So the next set of lines we're going to look at is 2400. And this is the office of the principal. So this is the secretary's salary, the principal, assistant principal's salary, and anything that relates to the office operations. So for employee training and development, there's a cut there that's similar to the cuts that we've all made. Mine's double just because there's two of us. So if Patrick Flynn goes to a conference, I go to a conference. So it's $900 a person, which I think was the same number as what Kim had. Postage, this number is a pretty steady number. I've worked really hard to reduce this. It used to be like out of control, but we've done a lot better. So I think 8,500 is a consistent number. I've been nervous about that, but I'm feeling good about that. Telephone, I think, already talked about adding the hotspot. Employee travel, I just increased it $100. It wasn't sufficient last year. I had to, I think my last trip was to project graduation and I had to move money to cover it. So it's been a little bit under for a couple years, so I added some there. The general supplies have to do with just the main office general supplies. So we have electronic key cards for teachers to be able to wave themselves into the building. It's part of our security. Photocopier supplies for the main office. And just general, other supplies that we may need. We have a fax machine, we've got a folding thing, we got a bunch of other stuff. A hole puncher.
Folding thing. A machine that folds
pamphlets
materials.
and things
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
gonna
Got it. Sorry.
mail home.
I just
Yeah,
got it.
and the one we had was actually really bad, so we've actually borrowed the one from central office, so at some point we may need to buy one, but I think we're fine for right now.
So telephone is cell phones?
That telephone is cell phones, because the other telephone line is in the maintenance budget. Yeah,
and that's
so-
not just Carrie and Patrick.
Right,
There's
so
a
there's
third
also
phone.
Maggie Thornton is in there. And Maggie Thornton is the
Donald.
DPATH director, and if she doesn't have a cell phone, she can't communicate with her kids or her parents because they pretty much only text. Like, we have one parent that we meet with regularly, and the only way that we can communicate them is through texting, and that's how Maggie does that. So when she became the director of the program several years ago, she was given a cell phone, and I continue to support that.
So it's probably like 4 or 5 cell phones?
No, Dawn's going to be
No,
in
they're
conference with us.
about Yeah,
There's only-
Dawn. I was gonna
No,
say,
Dawn's
Dawn
is in
should be in
co-curricular.
his.
Right.
They're about $900 a phone when you include the hotspot and unlimited, I think we have unlimited data.
But I'm
or-
the only one with a hotspot.
Well,
Maggie
every,
doesn't have one.
no, every
Yeah, I
element,
just meant
every
from this
principal,
one.
yes.
From this line.
And are they all, do you have a contract for all those? Because I know years ago they had Verizon and US
No.
Cellular.
Yeah.
all those
We're all
right?
Verizon, yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
So there's only three, I think there's only three there,
Yeah.
right?
That makes
Okay,
sense
Wendy,
with the,
okay,
that
good.
makes sense with the amount.
Okay, and then dues and fees are MPA membership for Patrick and I, ASCD, which is a professional organization, National Association of Secondary Schools, certification for administrators. It's pretty straightforward. It doesn't change very much each year. Okay. Office of the Principal. Are there any questions? Okay, so the 2,600, we're gonna skip, that's all maintenance. And so the 1,000, all those lines in 1,000 are regular instruction, that's where the bulk of the money is. So I only had a 1% increase, I had a bunch of teachers who got frozen. And I only hired 1 or 2 people last year. 2 years ago was a big hiring, so I ended up with a cut because I ended up with a lot of new teachers. We have 14 probationary teachers right now at the high school level. And
It's
working.
14 of your, like 36 or something?
Yeah.
So like a third of your teachers are?
Yeah, thanks
Okay.
for doing the math
Good for
there.
you.
Appreciate that. Yep, it's been fun.
So
They're
who-
great. I'm just gonna say
Right.
they're great, but it's a lot of work.
And that's one of the things that we keep coming back to, is you have cuts or reductions for years on end, and then our salaries were, not as competitive as they needed to be. So just the last 2 years, I've hired I think it's 42 teachers in the district and many more other staff ed techs. And that was one of the big reasons why we knew we had to have some decent raises.
And the high school is not in a position to have a lot of people retiring. So when I hire 14, those aren't people who retired. Those are mid-level teachers who've been around and they go and find somewhere else to be. So I think we've had 2, maybe 3 retirements since the high school's been open in '99. It's just a very young staff. So it's not really that simple in terms of what it might look like at Minot. When they lose people, it's most likely to retirement.
If they're probationary, does that mean they all have to have mentors?
Yes.
So there's
Well, no, not necessarily, because if they're certified, if they're fully certified, so if they're probationary, if they're year 1 in our district, they may not be a year 1 teacher.
Oh, okay.
So it really depends on, they're not all the same. So 2 years ago, I had 7 certification mentors.
Great.
This year, I hired 1, 2. Some of them are very experienced teachers who move from out of state, so they've got to change their certification, so it really is different. But they don't all need a certification mentor.
Most of them will get one for the first year they're here, I think.
If they're
Yeah.
fully certified, they won't.
Okay.
I don't anyway. I don't know they don't, there's no certification involved
Right.
if they're coming from another school in Maine. But like one great math teacher I hired came here from Connecticut, so she had to get one to get her certification moved over. Yeah. Okay. So there's the substitute line is at $36,000. That increased last year. It
Oh,
went
I'm
from
sorry.
30. I'm in the teacher. Sorry, I'm just
No,
like
no,
the third line.
I wanted to go back up a line.
Oh,
But I
perfect.
apologize. Finish your.
I
section.
just wanted you to know that that was underfunded for many, many years. So 36, I think, is a safe number. We frequently go over that, but we also frequently are covering teachers who are on unpaid leave, so it balances out. So we may go over on the sub line, but we're saving in the salary line for a teacher who's beyond 6 weeks of paid medical leave. So it works out. It works out.
So the question I had, Carrie, was on the ed tech salary
Yep.
line, which is a bigger
Oh,
than
yes,
normal
there's something I
increase.
gotta tell you about that. Thank you very much. I have my notes, I keep going between the paper you have and my paper, and I keep losing notes, so thank you. So, Nelson Williams has been working in the office as a student, student discipline assistant. So he was hired, maybe 10 years ago now. He has been sort of off the contract in this sort of just own separate job description. So I have moved him. He has gotten his Ed Tech 3 certification, and so I've moved him into the Ed Tech contract. So he did originally show up in the office of the principal position, so that you'll see a cut there, and the increase is here. So it's just moving. I'll go back because I did forget to say that. I apologize.
So
if
it's
you
not,
look,
it's not actually an increase, it's a move.
it's a
from the-
little bit of an increase
A little
because
bit.
he was being underpaid,
Right,
but
right.
it's not a new position. So I think the decrease you see is in secretary's salary. Is that where you had it? Wendy?
wondered what that was for.
Yep,
so
yep,
that
my
must be-
mistake,
okay.
I apologize. So he was in the secretary's salary line, so you see it went down $15,000. And he moved into the regular instruction ed tech line, and I think the salary increase was $4,000. So he went from 15 to 19?
No,
No?
that includes, that 19 increase includes the other.
Includes the
ed-
Oh, includes the other,
includes
okay. So he had some increase because I know he was off step.
So then the only other question that I have, just
Yep.
so I understand, is that he now has the ed tech designation, but
Correct.
is he still working in the principal's office?
Yep,
Okay.
so when,
So he's not
Tina-
really a regular instruction, that's kind of why I was.
Well,
wondering.
no, he is. Tina and I talked about his
Okay.
placement. He is an Ed Tech 3 because he is often working with individual students or small groups of students.
Mhm.
He is often doing mediation, conflict resolution and mediation. He is often working with students around community service consequences they may have from the judiciary board or from the assistant principal or myself.
Mhm.
So it is instructional in nature,
Okay.
even though he's not in a classroom.
Right,
So he is directly supervised by Patrick Flynn.
okay.
And, yeah, that's why Carrie and I talked about what was the most appropriate placement for him. If he were a hall monitor, it
Right.
wouldn't be, we wouldn't want to have him as
Or
an
like a
ed
study
tech
hall monitor.
necessarily.
He's not that.
Right, but because he was working with children and, like the intensifying interventions, he's doing some RTI when he's working with them on
Yep,
their
okay.
behavior and other things, so
Yep.
made sense.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so there's a bunch of, the tutor salary is right below the ed tech salary. That $7,000 pays for, we run a regular credit recovery program after school that is staffed by teachers, so I pay them the tutoring rate. They are working primarily with juniors and seniors who are behind and in danger of not graduating.
Right.
And so if I am a senior and I fail senior English semester 1, there's not a lot of options. If I don't finish senior English by the end of June, I'm not going to graduate. So those students, it's sort of like a during the school year summer school. So they can go to this program after school. It runs 3 days a week. There's an English teacher, staff set, a math teacher, and then we can hire individual teachers like if kids need to get caught up in a science class or something like that. So it used to be, they used to come in late and stay late, but I needed more flexibility with other content areas, so we changed it. Plus I needed them teaching during the day. So, so it's an hourly rate. Okay. Purchase professional services is the next sort of budgeted line. And this covers a lot of things that are repairs to educational things that we have in classes. The kiln, for example, in the art room. Science equipment repair. We'll have a yearly maintenance of like their what are those things called? Where you look at like
Probes,
stuff.
microscope.
Microscopes, thank you, microscopes. We have a ropes course, we have a climbing wall, that gets inspected on a regular basis. Those are all things that kids are using for their education. Employee training and development, you can see like everyone else, it's been cut back with the hope that we'll be using Title II money. That money stays, however, as large it is because the high school has a lot of summer work to do around changes in the law around graduation, which refers to the proficiency-based diploma. We haven't talked about that a lot, but there's a lot of work that we need to do. We're not enforcing that law yet, but we will be, and so it requires me to have staff in the summer to do some of that work and planning. So a lot of that's going to be used to pay them to come in. The next line is a printing and binding line. This is a brand new line. We produce a yearbook every year. The cost of the yearbook is approximately $11,000. The vast majority of the funds used to print that yearbook are raised by selling ads you know, to parents, to community businesses, things like that. It is a class. It is a class that I have never budgeted for. So in talking about the budgeting process this year, I need to provide some resources to that course to help them make sure that they can get the yearbook done on budget. So it's also, I inherited a yearbook when I became principal that was pretty chaotic. It had a big debt. It was sort of like the stepchild that got handed around to lots of different people. It was kind of a mess. So we've got it in a really good place now. So I felt like I might have been throwing money at it and throwing it away for a while, but I don't feel that way right now. So it feels like a good time to start helping with that process. We may be able to get to the point where we don't need to contribute to that, but I think it's necessary right now. Okay, let's see. Employee travel, that is has been underfunded, so I added $100 to that because it's not been sufficiently budgeted for. DPATH is our alternative program. They use the materials from all the other learning areas, so it's small just because they just buy any additional smaller supplies they may need. So the technology department, so what you'll see in my budget, which is different from others, it's broken down by department. So the technology department is our video and TV program, our technology, robotics and machine shop program. Trevor Tidd runs that, and then we have computer programming courses. So that's it's one of the two most expensive learning areas that we operate in the building, and that's because they're high tech and there's a lot of materials. So Trevor runs material processing. Kids are building things. You know, it's sort of the traditional shop that we remember. He doesn't teach a lot of those classes, but he does teach them. And he's also running robotics classes that are high tech as well. So that amount is a pretty consistent amount that they need. Literacy is text for professional work, and the RTI team for ideas for implementing with students. Phys ed supplies, these are balls and rackets and things like that. World language supplies, this is for the Spanish teachers. Paper and things like that they use in their classrooms. The next big amount you will see is from science. Science with technology is the most expensive content area we teach. Lots of chemicals, dissections, equipment, stuff. AP Biology is a very expensive class to run. Chemistry is a very expensive class to run, and all these are necessary for kids who are going to go off to college, whether it be nursing school or anything else. Science is an expensive content area, and so that is mostly, there'll be equipment, demonstration, kits, hot plates, all kinds of different things that they have. Okay, math supplies, graph paper, rulers, things like that. Humanities supplies, this is humanities, this is English and social studies together. They don't use a lot of paper supplies, so they have a pretty small budget.
Yeah.
Art, yep, go ahead.
Actually, you've got a
Oh, it went up by
increase in-
800, yes.
So are you getting new books
No, the books are in a
in
different line.
humanities?
Books are in a different line, so I'll get to
Okay.
that in a minute.
Oh,
Yeah, this
okay,
is like
I'm looking down
this
this
is like
big one.
supplies. This
Okay,
is just,
okay, yep.
and there's 13 teachers in humanities, so you sort of divide that up by that many teachers. It's not a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
It's markers and colored pencils for coloring in maps and things like that. So art, this is a pretty consistent, they do a good job. Tom Chasen budgets pretty appropriately for what they do. This is all the stuff of, printmaking, clay for glazes, paints, brushes, things like that. Music supplies, guitar strings, brass oils, reeds. It's a pretty consistent thing, that he's got to have every year for the band. It's pretty much just band stuff. Guitar strings, okay? General instructional supplies. So this covers all the other instructional supplies that are not specific to a content area. So there's about $7,000 in there just for photocopy paper that gets used across the building. Partial payments for graduation gowns, diplomas, the diploma covers, things like that. I actually have a firm number for the first time of how much graduation actually costs, like that piece of it, The kids pay a chunk of it through their fundraising. That's part of their responsibility, but the school side is $3,300. Photocopier supplies for the copiers that are out and about in the building. I cut that back last year, and I'm a little bit nervous I cut it back too much, so I added a little bit more. And it's cut a little bit more than what I originally asked for, which I'll talk about in a minute. FYI.
Thank
We'll
you,
get to that
Carrie.
part. Thank you. Well, you told us. Literacy, that's the Learning Center. Any books that they need to help work with students. Books for world language. These are Spanish books that kids read, you know, that kind of thing. Math books, we spent a chunk of money last year to replace AP statistics and add a class, advanced topics in algebra. If you remember, the board approved that last year. So they don't need all that book money this year, so I gave it to somebody else. Humanities, the big purchase this year, we are replacing the AP Government and AP Language books. Those books are from 2009, and so they are outdated, and it's time. And I've got all the AP classes, which are very expensive books in general. They're on a rotation so that teachers can't always ask me for new books and new books and new books. So we've got them on a rotation and to spread the cost out and move the money between the departments. So humanities is up this year for that increase. Music is choral and band arrangements. They purchase about 8 different ones a year. Equipment, the wellness equipment line. This is something that I've been working with them on. You have spent this about this amount of money for the last 2 years. So this is the 3rd year of a 3rd-year plan to increase the amount of equipment they have for students to use. And this would be big equipment, not balls, but like spinning bikes and things like that. Snowshoes, like larger things that are not just sort of, you know, things that they purchase on a regular basis. And this was to get us from nothing. We had a bunch of stuff in '99, it broke, we spent no money on it, and it didn't exist. So we've spread it out. So this line will likely go down next year. It's not going to go away, but it probably won't be this much because I had them sort of spread it out so that it could be built over time. The music equipment, we've got keyboards that are old. We've got a drum set that are old. They're all from '99, so they are done and need to be replaced. I think furniture is no longer here. It's on my list, but it's not on yours. That got moved.
Can I?
And then dues and
Yes,
fees. I'll just do
it
dues and
is.
fees real quick.
It's on it.
That's the school's membership in the MPA that allows our students to participate in tournaments, things like that. So it's a per student fee. We also belong to the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. We're accredited, so that's a yearly fee as well. And we also belong to the Share Center in Auburn, where teachers can go and get free supplies. So that's pretty much those 3 things. So that's regular instruction.
And I just wanted to bring your attention to the top of page 4, where it says 16 to 20 tuition, and then tuition paid to other SAUs. So what you're seeing, the 16 to 20 tuition, that is the adult ed money that we get in subsidy for any 16 to 20-year-old that is attending adult ed. We get some money for that. And this year, the allocation that came in based on our last year's participation is $75,000, and we try to bring the money that comes in, we put back into that program because they are really bare bones. So that's why that's up to 75. And for the tuition paid to other SAUs, our last tuition agreement is done this year, so we won't have to pay tuition out going forward to places like Hebron Academy. There was an agreement before, I think when the
Part of the
SAU,
consolidation
yeah, the
agreement.
consolidation agreement for
Going
like
there.
Oh,
teachers, yeah. So this is our last student there, so that will be a 0 going forward.
I forgot one last line in the regular instruction. It's the $2,700 cost for trip transportation. That's up slightly. I've gone over this line a couple times in a couple years, and partly it's because I don't always know where I am, but partly because I also have forgotten to include the cost for project graduation transportation. So the parents of the graduating seniors are responsible for raising all the funds to put project graduation on, which is a all-night party for seniors after graduation with the goal of making sure they're all in a safe place and nothing bad happens on graduation. That's a statewide thing. But I contribute this. I have committed in the transportation line to pay for the buses, so that's just one thing that they don't need to do. They pay for the hotel room for the bus drivers to stay in. Like, we don't do that, but that is what we do. All of the trips that the high school takes, pretty much none of them are educational related. They're all related to college visits. We pay for transportation. We take a yearly college trip somewhere in New England, the Gran Turismo, that's getting up and running, and then mostly it's University of Maine, St. Joe's, Bates, like all within Maine. So that's pretty much all that money. That we don't really do any other kinds of field trips.
And the transportation line for all of them includes now not only the fuel cost, but also the cost of the driver. Is that correct? Because I know some of them said they were including that.
I don't know that to be true.
Yeah, I don't know that either.
So Tom could speak with to that when he talks about the transportation lines. I do know that there was an effort to make sure the schools were paying for the special trips. Our transportation department pays for regular transportation to and from school, and so I know there has been some shift, but I don't know exactly what is included in that. So we can bring that back up when Tom's here, and I'm sure he knows.
Okay, so the last part of the high school budget is co-curricular and extracurricular. So this is the $1,9,500 and the $1,9,600. So co-curricular are those activities that are somehow rooted in the curriculum that we're doing. So theater, clubs, so the Nor'easter Bowl, kids go to this competition around science. There's a cooking club, there's a fishing club. These are the student council stuff is all sort of considered part of co-curricular. Extracurricular is athletics. So, and it's in two different budget sections, just to help you understand that piece. Don King is the co-curricular director. So he manages both the co-curricular side and the athletic side. And I like to always call him a co-curricular director and not an athletic director because he is responsible for both. Lots of schools just have an athletic director. So there are the stipends for that. Those are for all the things that teachers are doing, and sometimes not teachers, with kids running student council. Those stipends are contractual, so they're, whatever those positions are, the amount that's assigned to them per the contract. And those went up from the contract a year ago, so there's no change to them. They're set. There's no increase. So you will see program supplies of about $1,300. This pays for awards, clubs, supplies, some money for the drama club for set design, some money for yearbook because that's not just a class, it's also a club after school. So it's pretty minimal, but it's just a little bit here for various programs. And then the dues and fees primarily have to do with royalties for the plays. When we have a play, we have to pay royalties. We have a very good and talented speech and debate club, and so there are fees for their tournaments. We have a math team, so we pay fees for that. Let's see. Music, so any kids who make District 2s or go to All-State, there are fees associated with that. So any students who have music things. And then we also pay the fees for Special Olympics because those count also as part of the co-curricular. And then there are transportation costs. Pretty much that is reflected in speech and debate. So they have 8 different tournaments that they'll travel to. Math team will travel, but that's about it. There's not a ton of travel related to that. 1 trip for yearbook. So. Couple of trips but those are the primary big ones. Okay. So the next group is the $9,600, and that's extracurricular. That's athletics. So Dawn's salary is reflected in that piece. And again, the programs that have to do with the middle school are budgeted in the middle school. Dawn oversees 7 through 12, so he is working both for Sean and for myself.
So his salary, et cetera, is split between the two budgets?
Yes, that's
Same
true.
thing as the library, 2/3,
Yes,
1/3?
yep. Yeah, I don't know, I think the high school probably costs more in terms of supplies and all that, but
Yeah.
the salaries should be split that way. I'm making that assumption, I haven't actually ever done the math to figure out if that's true. But it should be. So the stipends in this line are more significant, they're coaching salaries, just because the number of hours and investment is significantly different. Again, the contract, it was determined through the contract process. Those increased last year, there's no more increases until the contract changes. Let's see, so if I slide down, the next line that is, a brand new line is the tuition reimbursement. As part of the administrator contract, similar to teachers, the ability to be reimbursed for graduate degrees. So Don has started a master's program, and I have not budgeted for him in the past because he wasn't doing that, but he is now. So we've added that line. Originally I put it in with Patrick and I, but it makes more sense to have it here. So purchase professional services, that has to do with all of our, all the referees that we hire for games. We hire a sheriff to do football games for the most part, sometimes basketball games, but we always have one at the football games. It's such a large group, and depends on which basketball game and
I was just gonna
who
say.
might be there.
Depends on if we're
Anyone who's
playing.
been to a basketball game could tell you what I'm talking about. So we pay for all those, and that the cost of that is determined statewide, so we don't have control over sort of how much we want to pay a ref, and if we don't like them, whether or not we want to pay them at all. But that's a whole different thing as well. So that is purchase professional services, employee training, CPR training, coaching certificates, conference. Dawn goes to 1 or 2 conferences a year. So that is that. Telephone, again, his cell phone. Employee travel, I told Dawn, it's been $1,000 for years. I told Dawn that he needed to increase it. He goes over it every year but does not charge the district. He travels a great deal because he does both conferences for, he's meeting with the conferences for both the middle school and the high school. So there's a lot of driving. The regular Western Maine conference meeting is in Old Orchard Beach, for example, and that's pretty monthly. So there's a lot of travel for him. Program supplies. The true cost of this is about $19,770. We take $5,000 every year out of the participation fees that we charge students for playing athletics, and use that to reduce the amount of money that is in the budget for program supplies. Every student has to pay, if they want to play a sport, has to pay $25 per sport. And it's much higher if they're playing ice hockey. I think it's $450 if they're playing ice hockey. And that's, Dawn's got a uniform replacement schedule that's pretty conservative. Mouth guards, soccer balls, things like that. And then the last one are dues and fees. So we have to pay to belong to conferences. The Western Maine Conference is where most of our sports play. Football plays in the Campbell Conference. We have registration fees for various, for golf or ice hockey timing and things like that. So that totals up to the dues and fees line. And then the cost for trip transportation. Don is able to do a very good job of being very tight on this. He knows how many games and where they're going, and it's just a mileage fee. So that's for all the away games. And it looks like he just did the math, and you're paying 20% of Don. So we got to increase that.
No, I don't think so.
You should be paying 33%.
Ask him how he distributes his time.
I spent several years with Sean. Yeah.
He might have you on that one, Carrie.
I don't know. We just, the only reason I say that third and third is because there's a long time where the high school had all of the money for the library, all the money for Dawn. And so I spent, when Aisha was here, she and I spent some time, and since with Sean, making sure that it really reflects the costs of running the middle school separate from the high school, even though we share a building. And there's a lot of things that cost less because we share a building. There are separate costs.
And
all right.
Earlier we talked about EPS and the funding for our co-curricular. And remember I said $60,000 was what the state contributes. And so you're looking at around $375,000 of actual costs. And of course we all know the positive benefits of sports, but they're very expensive. And that is the that's the reality of it. It's not supported at the state level.
And just in terms of comparisons to other schools that we're in the Western Maine Conference with, I would say we're running one of the smaller number of offerings. So if you went to other schools that we play, they have other sports that we don't offer, and that's fine. I mean, the programs we're running are great, and the kids like them, but we're not. I just say that so that you know that we're not running a ton of programs. We're running sort of the minimum that we can support.
The cost for transportation, to me, it seems high. How many events do they go to? I mean, generally.
Yeah. So I don't know if
Well, I could, from experience, off the top of my head, I mean, each sport plays 14 to 16 games a year.
Dawn
half of them
actually has it written down.
half of them away and half of them at home. So if you look at just girls soccer, they'd have, let's say, whatever that would be, they'd have 7 or 8 games away just for girls soccer, and then you'd have boys soccer,
Yeah,
and then you have cross country.
Town over, I mean, you don't go with.
Oh yeah,
Well,
but you
most
can
of them
go.
are
You can go as far as Freiburg. They play York, Wells. So I think it's just the volume. If you think of the number of sports each season and the number of times a team is going on the road.
So he's budgeted 11
that's
trips for boys basketball, 11 trips for girls basketball, 9 trips for boys soccer, 9 trips for girls soccer. I mean, it's sort of, and they will, sometimes they'll play Freiburg or Granny Gloucester or Lake Region, but they also play Wells and York and other schools like that. And those schools are coming
Freiburg
here.
as well.
Like it's,
Yeah.
it swaps out,
yeah.
so that cost is there, so.
And the other thing that I would say to that is we don't have a choice in that. We have to play each team, in that schedule to be part of an MPA program.
Right, it just seems like
so it is a
Yeah, it's a lot. No, that's
money.
why. It's why we don't do any other field trips at the high school, because I know where that cost is. So so that's why we've reduced the trips that we take for regular education to just the college trips, because it is a high cost.
But when you think about it, I mean, there are a lot of
Oh,
different
yeah.
teams. I mean, in the fall, you've got
yeah.
boys varsity and JV soccer, boys varsity and JV football, girls varsity and JV field hockey, girls varsity and JV soccer, cross country, and golf, right? Or is golf spring?
No,
Oh,
golf
golf
there.
ball.
Golf fall. So
And-
all those teams are just the fall sports. So.
I mean, he's got in here 1,300 miles for golf. And they run in vans, so he does, whenever we can send a team in a van versus a bus, it's a significantly reduced price. So golf always goes in vans, but it's $1,300 because they'll go to Shakopee Valley, and some of their tournaments, if they play Shakopee, they're actually playing in New Hampshire because that's where Shakopee plays, so it's even farther than what we would do. So $1,800 miles for baseball and softball.
Is it
It's a lot.
cross country or is it? Am I thinking of co-curriculars where they sometimes actually ride share with other schools?
Yeah, no, we have done that. It's not easy, but we
Right.
have done that. So we'll, speech and debate actually does that pretty frequently, where the kids will work with Lewiston or Auburn to pick up and drop off on the
Yeah.
way. If they're going to Bangor, if they're going out, to Booth Bay or something like that, they'll make a
We
plan
try
to
to
pick
share.
each other up. It doesn't happen a lot just because it's not a simple thing, but yes.
But if possible, we
Yeah,
do that.
We
and
do
when
it.
Tom runs out of buses, the middle school will drop kids off at Granite Gloucester, take them to Yarmouth, come back and pick them up, so it happens a lot. It's a challenge.
So do you want to talk about your?
Oh yeah, there's more.
Yes.
So, what I have given you, you have 2 more documents, a priority list, and then I've given you a supplemental piece of paper regarding science. So the biggest priority that we have at the high school is an update and shift in the science curriculum. So the request is $12,400. So I'm going to direct you to this piece of paper that I gave you that is in color, so I used a highlighter so that the yellow would work, because I know when I handed this out to the board before, they were like, what's yellow? It's not yellow. So currently the high school, this will not change. The high school currently requires students to take 4 science classes while they're in high school. That's not uncommon. It was uncommon when we opened. It's increasingly uncommon now. Right now, students have to take a course called Integrated Science 1, which is mostly physical science, chemistry, physics, things like that. And then Integrated Science 2, which is more life science, biology. Okay? So, and then students have choices. The national curriculum, the national standards are being updated, and Maine is adopting those updated national standards. We've updated the math and the ELA standards, and it didn't really cost us very much money. We were doing a lot of things that were already in line with that, so we've already adopted those and I've shifted to them without a lot of cost. The science changes are a little bit more dramatic. And one of the big pieces that is different is a focus on engineering, which is a huge piece of what the American society, both economically as well as in other ways, is really sort of needing and pushing in terms of what students are experiencing in school. So the cost for that that's what's reflected in here. So the science department brought this to the school board, and they approved, pending budget, of course, this shift. So the 9th grade curriculum is going to shift. It will be called 9th grade science unless we can, before next year, come up with a better name. That will be a focus still on physical science, chemistry and physics, but with a huge increase of engineering practices that are going to be involved in that. And so this involves students designing, building, revising things. So I'll pick a bridge just as a simple example, and one that I was not a science teacher, but one that I can sort of adapt to. So kids are going to be asked to do the engineering process that they would have to do in other STEM areas outside of school, in careers and things like that. And so those are materials that we'll need to purchase. In the following year, biology, that won't be a big change in terms of what we are already doing. And then the junior year, instead of an elective, we're going to ask students to all take chemistry. There's 2 different types of chemistry, or 2 levels of chemistry that will offer, one that's heavily more math and one that's a little bit less math, so that students can pick where it's appropriate. Already 75% of our kids are taking chemistry, so it shouldn't be a huge change for most of them. And then they'll have an opportunity to take an elective. So the changes that we're asking for next year, the big increase in the 9th grade curriculum would be in mostly materials, $5,000 that we're asking for. Let me just make sure I have the correct 9th grade science class. So things that they're looking to purchase would be kits and supplies around energy, the topic of energy, the topic of force, which is a physics thing, building car kits, things like that, and consumables. Some of that is a one-time purchase, probably that will last for a long time, and then we'll just be replacing along. So that $5,000 is not likely to remain $5,000 every year to keep that course going. Okay? The second change that they are requesting, that again the board approved pending budget, is to eliminate 3 electives that we currently offer: advanced biology, geology, and environmental studies. Advanced biology, the changes to the sophomore biology class pretty much are going to cover what that advanced biology class is, so we're not going to need it. It's a little duplicative right now, the kids who take it. Kids who are going into the medical field are taking chemistry, anatomy and physiology, AP biology, and all those courses still exist. And they want to replace that with a course called forensics, which has a tie to law enforcement. And so the cost for this, our goal is we're going to be down to 1 elective, and always with those electives, it's important that they are courses that kids want to take, because you hate to run a small class of electives with like 11 kids in it. They need it for graduation, they need a science elective, but there's not a ton of kids who are taking that class. So we feel confident that this is a class that will have multiple sections and will have lots of kids in it. It'll be a semester course, so the cost for this initially will be about $7,000. Again, that is a one-time big chunk, because a lot of that is in textbooks and some supplies. They will not cost that much to run the course each year after that. It will be a lot of consumables. So,
Carrie?
Yep.
So on the science changes, the
Yep.
third one you mentioned that's not in here
Yep.
Is the junior year, everybody now takes chemistry. So
Yep.
across those kind of 3 curricular changes,
Yep.
are there either staffing changes or professional development that needs to be done to have teachers ready to do these content areas?
So the only thing that we have to do, which has nothing to do with chemistry, I have one teacher. So science is a high school science. There are 2 different certifications, which is quite annoying. Because it's not like this in every state. You can either be certified in life science, which is biology, or certified in physical science, which is chemistry, physics, geology, astronomy. And so you can only teach what you're certified in. So I have I look very, very hard to hire teachers who are certified in both, because then they can do anything, right? But I have a couple who are certified only in one area. So I have one teacher right now who is physical science certified, that is taking, like I sort of said to them, I can't make these changes if one of you doesn't get certified in the other area. So he's committed to doing that. So he's picking away at courses, has sort of conditional certification from the state to teach a life science class, and is taking classes. Other than that, we're all set.
Okay,
Everything
great.
will be covered within. There's not going to be any sort of changes with that.
Great, thank you.
Okay. We also need to add choral risers. Yay, we have an awesome chorus that is growing because the teacher is so awesome, so we don't have enough risers for them. So that's $2,700. So the total ask on top of sort of the maintenance of effort for the high school regular instruction is $15,000. What has already been reduced is a total of $9,400. That's supplies, mostly supplies, employee training, and library, and then a chunk of technology stuff that Linda's going to go over.
And these are actual cuts from the previous year?
No.
Yeah,
These are,
all the same
it's the
thing,
same process with the others. So she came in with a budget and we said, we're not gonna be able to get some of these bigger priorities or go forward with this budget probably without some additional cuts. And so this is like, I talked about earlier, we've done 2 rounds of cuts and these were eliminated from her initial ask.
Does not cut any programs, anything like that.
Okay, any questions for Carrie? So our next